Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On this episode of Conversations with Big Rich, I'll be talking with longtime industry insider Chris Bolger. I met Chris in the early 2000s. He was with ProComp Tire. Chris has worked with many of the early rock crawling teams, including being one of our marketing partners with CalRock's rock crawling. Chris, it's really great to have you on board. I know that besides ProComp, you've worked for a number of different companies, and we'll get into all that. So thank you for coming on board and spending some time with us.
It's great to have a good conversation with you, Rich. It's been too long.
Yes, it has. So let's jump right in, and we'll do the easiest question of all time for some. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Kentucky, California, and raised in Rialto, California, just right in the heart of the Inland Empire.
Okay. So you meant Fontana?
Yes.
That's awesome. So what was it like back there? And let's see, with your age, that's probably sometime in the 60s?
I was born in 71. So
71. Okay.
Yeah. So I can't remember that far back, but mid 70s it was all.
Come on, you can't remember being in diapers?
Thank God, no. I can only remember the more recent shitting myself episodes.
Perfect.
But back then it was all grapevines and orange groves and Kaiser steel, and that was all that was out there.
Well, that's amazing, because it's not like that now.
Oh, no, it's all subdivisions and big buildings and Amazon distribution centers.
Yeah, that's what I noticed down in that area, that, along the freeways, is it just seems like that all there are is warehouses. Just lovely.
Back then, the biggest thing out there was Ontario Speedway. That's long gone.
And that's a shame.
Yeah. Those were the early good days. Now it's been replaced with Fontana Speedway, which is a far cry from what Ontario was.
Absolutely. I've been out there. I've been to Fontana. In fact, they were looking to build a four-wheel drive training facility / rock crawling site, because they were hooked up with Falcon Tire at the time. And I'm not sure if they are now or not, but we were going to build a tire testing center for them, and then put rock crawling in down on the, what would be the number 1 and number 2 corners on the outside, not on the inside, but in the parking lot area. But that all fell through.
That would have been amazing. That
would have been awesome. But it's typical with some of that stuff. We were hoping to try to get into NASCAR tracks, and it's never happened.
Yeah. I remember interviewing for a job with Andrew Hoyt at Falcon Tire and looking out the window of the Falcon building and seeing the big slag heap for Kaiser Steel, and just it all kind of comes together some point in our lives.
It does, doesn't it?
Because Kaiser Steel was where I was going to work growing up. It was kind of a family tradition. Uncle, grandpa worked there both, and that was what I was going to do. And then they went out of business, and I had to find something else to do with my life.
And we'll get to that. But the early years, school. What was school like for you? Were you a good student or were you indifferent?
I was a nerd up until about 9th grade, and then I discovered the wrong group of friends to fall into, and girls, and that led to cars, and then I barely got out of high school. It was a quick downfall.
That's a path that it seems like many of us have followed.
I think I have fallen into every cliche path out there. After high school, I went into the Army, was there for about 8 years, and then I did the typical GI path out of that. I got out, bought a Jeep, because that's what you do when you get out of the Army, and tried to go to college and failed at that miserably. Failed
at college or buying the Jeep?
Well, both. I mean, it was an 84 CJ7, so that was a big failure right there. And college didn't go so well, so I ended up at Four Wheel Parts.
And that hasn't turned out all that bad.
No, that was a beautiful thing. I got George Adler, the founder, overruled the sales manager who didn't want to hire me, and George personally hired me, so I always had that to hold over my boss's head.
That boss wasn't one of the other Adlers, was it?
No, it was a guy by the name of Ben, who I have lost track of over the years.
So back in the Army, well, let's go back into high school, or even before that, when you were your nerd years. Did you play sports, or what kind of activities were you into?
No, Rich. When I say nerd, I mean mathlete. I was on the academic decathlon team and all of the math club and all the nerd stuff you could possibly be into. Dungeons and Dragons yeah.
So you had a big fall from grace then.
Yes.
From, academic decathlon to party time and yes, almost not getting through school. That must have made parents happy.
Especially when my dad was a biology professor at the local junior college.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, it was a real hit with the family.
And what kind of activities did the family enjoy then? Did you guys go camping or hunting or fishing or anything?
A lot of beach camping down the Southern California beaches. We had a cabin up near Big Bear, so that was a lot of time up there. Skiing was still the thing to do. It was way before snowboarding, so winters were up in the mountains skiing. And time at the beach. Back in the good old days, you could get to the mountains in 30 minutes from Rialto, and you could get to the beach in 45. So it was.
You can't even get out of Rialto that fast now.
Back in those days, you could take a dirt bike or a three-wheeler out into the desert 5 minutes from the house and be riding. Now you got to drive 2 hours.
Damn people.
Ridiculous.
So then with that beach camping, Big Bear camping, skiing, all of that, did that continue even after your fall from grace?
Oh yeah, it was always family. That was family time together.
And did you get a chance to drive early?
I didn't get. My first car was a '65 Mustang that I built with my grandpa in his front yard in Rialto, and that was the end of the end for me. So once I started driving, it was all over from that.
Right.
Every dollar I earned working at the lawnmower shop, or birthday money went into that car. So that's where I got oil in my veins.
Did So no off-roading early life? Maybe
Nope,
nope.
not really.
No motorcycles or anything like that?
Nope. Couple trips out with my uncle this was in the when three-wheelers were a big thing, so there was a few trips out with that and back of motorcycles with other family members, but yeah, not a whole lot. I never really got into breaking stuff off road till I got in the Army.
Okay. So high school, your fall from grace. You got your car. You're putting all the money you can into your car to get it the way you want, or to keep it running, which was my case. I spent more money keeping the car running than modifying it. But
I wasn't the best driver, so I spent a lot of money on body work.
oh, okay. So more like a demolition, or you just clip things?
Well, when if you've seen in movies when somebody hits a fire hydrant,
Right.
that's a really good depiction of what actually happens. The bolts shear off and the car fills with water.
Oh, Lord. In Rialto?
In Rialto.
So now we know why we don't have green grass in Northern California.
Now we know why I don't have water.
Right. So then high school, you did graduate?
I did graduate. Actually graduated a semester early, kind of towards the end, decided I didn't really want to be there anymore. So found out that if you took college classes, you got double credit. So Dad got me into the local junior college for a couple classes and was able to graduate a semester early and got out when I turned 17.
And how long until from that point did you join the Army?
I joined the Army before I graduated. I think I was 20 days after I turned 17. My mom signed the paperwork that said I could join before I turned 18, and I was gone 2 months after I graduated high school.
Wow. Okay.
I was 17 and 2 or 3 months. Birthday's in December. I was gone in March.
So that wasn't like court ordered or anything, right?
No.
And your dad was cool with it?
Yeah. So my dad's my stepdad, but so was my mom. They just knew college wasn't in the cards for me right away. I needed to get out of the Inland Empire for a little while and see what the rest of the world looked like. So
fair enough.
That was it.
And what part of the world did you get to see?
I got to see every part of the world that I never would have got to see if I hadn't joined. I was all over the states for basic training and advanced training and schools, North Carolina, Georgia, New Jersey. Do not recommend New Jersey in the winter. And then I shipped out to Germany, went to Spain for maneuvers, went to Iraq for that little skirmish we had back then, and was stationed in Northern California for a while. So everywhere, got to travel as a tourist while I was in Europe. It was awesome.
And what was your what do they call it? What was your assignments? What did you do while you were in the Army?
Well, fortunately, I tested well, so I hadn't lost my intelligence completely. So I tested pretty high on all the placement tests. So I ended up as part of the Army Intelligence Corps.
Well, that explains a lot now. Just having fun there, Chris.
No, I get it. It's the biggest oxymoron ever. Believe me, I heard every joke possible from my grandpa.
Was your grandfather an Army vet?
He was Army Air Corps back in World War II. So,
okay.
And every prediction that he made came true, and every piece of advice he gave me that I ignored came to fruition. He said, never volunteer for anything. I volunteered to jump out of airplanes and go to stupid schools that I never should have gone to. He said, as soon as you join, there'll be wars, because we hadn't had a war in so long, so I figured I was going to be safe. As soon as I get in, Grenada and Iraq, right on schedule for his timeline for me. So
There's a
man was
lot of
prophet.
wisdom in our grandparents.
Yep, and if we would just be smart enough to listen to them, we would save ourselves a lot of heartache.
Exactly.
But that never happens.
So with being in Army intelligence, you
So I got lucky enough, got stationed with the 10th Special Forces Group over in Germany. Got to do stupid stuff with those guys. You know, training with the local German military, NATO exercises. It was awesome.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And what was your favorite part of all that, or your favorite area?
Oktoberfest.
Spoken like a good GI.
Legal drinking age is 4'6". As long as you can see over the top of the bar, you can drink in Germany. So, you know, they have mandatory service for their military, their male children over there. So going out and being able to hit the town in someplace you've never been with the German military guys, Whitewater River training, where you end up at a old monastery that's been converted into a brewery. Yeah.
So everything finished with beer.
Pretty much, yep.
Pretty sweet. And when you got to be a tourist in Europe, what were some of the places that you visited besides Germany?
Went to a bunch of music festivals in Belgium. Took a bus across the channel to England. Skiing was still cool, still pre-snowboard times, and ended up spending any time I had off in the winter in Austria. So,
not too bad. How come you only spent 8 years?
I've always kind of been a guy who wanted to settle down, and I wanted my own garage. And when you're in the Army, you don't have a garage, you don't have a place to work on your own stuff. So that was kind of my thing.
Okay.
I wanted to put some roots down, and it was time to get back home to the family.
And at that point, when you got out, did you still have the Mustang?
I did. It was in my parents' garage until I got back. I would send parts home, and they would stack them on top of the car or in the car. And but when I got back, it was still there
and ready to be worked on.
Yep, ready to start up right where I left.
Great. And when you got out of the Army, what was your first employment? Was it right into four-wheel parts?
No, I started working for a company that screws up the grocery stores in the middle of the night for you.
You were stocking them?
I was resetting them. You know, like when you go in,
yep.
you go in on your typical day, and then you go in the next time, and nothing is where you thought it was before.
Yeah, I hate that.
I was that guy.
I know why they do it, but I hate it. They want you to shop and keep looking so that you find other things to buy.
Well, yeah, the companies that would employ us would decide they wanted something on a higher shelf, so they would pay more for that real estate in the higher shelf, and we'd go in and change every Ralph's or Vaughn's in Southern California.
Nice. And that gave you the days then to
try college again.
And did you have a course study that you were looking for?
I was going to follow in my dad's footsteps, and he was a biology professor, and that ended up being pretty good for him. So I thought that was a good enough career path for me.
And what convinced you otherwise?
I bought that Jeep, and I ended up needing parts, and four-wheel parts was the same as they are now, woefully understaffed. So I made some flippant comment, and they said, well, why don't you have an interview and see if you can work here? And that was the next one of those path-changing life moments. You know, we'll pay you to sell parts. You know the parts pretty well. You get a hefty employee discount. You're spending all your money here anyway, and it seemed like a good idea.
And so I would imagine that was the mid to going into the latter 90s?
Ah, God. Yeah, you're making me do math again. Yeah.
Well, you born in 71.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
So,
So
yeah. Okay. And you were just a regular salesman for him to begin with, or did you
I
jump into
st-
like right off into pro comp?
no, I started at the retail counter at the corporate headquarters in Gardena back then, and just did the front counter, then went over to mail order, came back to manage the front counter, back to mail order manager, and then about that time they decided they were going to start the tire company, and got tapped to go over to be a part of that.
Nice.
Yeah, George was a genius. He figured, hell, he couldn't get enough tires from all the manufacturers, so he would just make his own, cut out the middleman.
Right. And they basically private labeled everything pretty much from Cooper at that point, didn't they?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Cooper had a great relationship with Cooper. They came in, sketched out some tires on napkins up in Big Bear, and Cooper made it happen. Great partnerships over there with Jed Edmonds and some of the other guys over there.
And let's talk about the guy you used to work with at the tire business over there.
Scotty?
Yeah, Scotty Ward.
Yeah. Great guy, complete visionary. George gave him that ball to run, and he just took off and never looked back with it. Everything for him, it was back in those days. It wasn't spreadsheets making decisions. It was all gut instinct, and his instincts were great.
And you guys, pretty early in the rock crawling section, got hooked up with Dustin Webster.
Dustin and Becca, Red Bull rock crawlers, greatest people I've ever had the privilege to be associated with. Just salt of the earth guys.
Right. And, Dustin was the first North American Red Bull athlete. And before they even had North American Red Bull, he was still under a contract with the Europeans. But that was a pretty good, I mean, that had to help pro comp sales being tied in with Red Bull.
Yeah, 100%. Everywhere you looked, it's no secret. Dustin didn't win a whole lot of competitions, but he got more airtime, more press, more publicity than everybody who was winning everything.
Very true. And I think there was a lot of guys that didn't appreciate that. but Dustin had that if you can't win the show, be the show.
Exactly.
And then he was also always out there drumming up the media. He would get the writers, the local newspaper writers to come out. He would get the local news stations to come out and cover what they were doing. He would create events on his own, or get-togethers, to show people, offer, the local a reporter on the news station, hey, come out and ride with us and see what this is like. For a lifestyle
he was a consummate
story.
showman.
Yes.
The P.T. Barnum of the day, and he would, if there wasn't something going on, he would make something go on. And it wasn't just for him. What's the saying? A rising tide raises all ships.
Yes.
He had no problem with the publicity he was bringing being passed along to everybody, and it was a great thing. And he was a constant advocate for his partners, for us especially. Best thing that could have ever happened to Pro Comp Tires.
And with rock crawling in general, even though some people probably don't appreciate it or don't understand it, but he got us onto broader than a national stage, an international stage, with his tie-in with Red Bull and all the media that he would bring in from all over the world. I mean, it was just amazing.
Yeah. And then when Becca decided she wanted to start driving, it just increased.
True.
And I can say that The whole, when you look at connections throughout everything, so many people that have gone on to so many great things started with Dustin, really. Jody Everding went from Dustin spotter to winning it all in stock class. Nicole Johnson, who Frank, her husband, was Dustin's spotter, and now she's doing great things, was a Monster Jam driver, going all over the world, driving cars and living the best life. And Dustin helped a lot of people come along.
Yeah, even his crew chief, Dallas.
100%.
He may not be, that deep into the automotive industry, except for his business, parts business that he still has, but I think some of that relationship helped propel him to the things that he's been doing. I would like to think so.
I think, Dallas was young when he started with Dustin, and I think Dustin, gave him a lot of that drive Dallas always had the drive, but Dustin gave him the ability to use it and focus it. It's a good word. Focus it and make his decisions and do what he wanted to do with his life. Just a great story all the way through, from back all those years ago to now. And it's great to see them all still doing their stuff.
So I know that you guys had a relationship with Jody Everding as well.
Yep.
Being a driver, what was it like dealing with Jody? He was just on. His episode aired just a few weeks ago. So
never a dull moment with Jody. From the tattoos to the infamous piercing to yeah.
We didn't even. Well, I'm not going to touch on that. But we did not even go into that on his podcast.
But he was a character, but he was honestly, outside appearance and the persona he put out to the public, he was professional. He always wanted to do the best for us, and he always came through.
Right.
When Jack was spotting for him, those two were just a great team. And now that you mention him, I have lost touch with him, but every so often I'll get a call or a text out of the blue, and it just always brings a smile to my face.
Right. So I know Scotty had some health issues.
He's still up in Santa Clarita, but
okay.
He had as far as I know, another one I've kind of lost touch with.
Same here.
He had a stroke whenever that was, and healed up pretty well, but never quite was the same. Retired from 4-wheel parts, and just he and Alana were going to live their lives for a while and just have a good time.
Right. Good.
So.
Glad to hear that. Okay. So then your time at 4-wheel parts, what were some of the job duties that you had?
So after, all the retail stuff, and then basically with Scotty doing tires and wheels, I was his operations and marketing guy, because from the outside, the whole company looked huge, but it was always just a few guys making everything happen and running ragged and working 16, 18-hour days and sacrificing everything, just because George brought that out in people. You never wanted to disappoint the guy. And it wasn't that he drove you hard or anything like that, but you knew what was expected and you wanted to make it happen. And then when he left and it was Greg, the core crew at 4-wheel parts stayed the same, and it was always just a family. So it was really a great place to work back in the day.
Right.
So I handled all the advertising buys, the sponsorships. I've had the privilege of having really great jobs. They never really seemed like work. When you can hang out with your friends and go to cool places and do fun things, it's not work.
And still get paid for it.
Exactly.
Not bad.
Not a bad way to earn a living.
So then after the pro comp stint, you still stayed in-house, but you changed roles, didn't you?
No, after pro comp, and after Scotty had his stroke, they did a whole lot of reorganization over there, and that was about the time the 2008 2009 recession happened. I was part of the reduction in force there because Scotty really couldn't do what he was doing anymore, so they combined all the house brands under one team, and that wasn't Scotty's team, so all the redundant team members got let go, and I was redundant at that point. So I was out on the streets.
And what did you do at that point?
Relaxed a little bit finally after 15, 16 years that I had been at 4 Wheel Parts running ragged. And after that, I ended up working for Dave Cole and Jeff Knoll when they started Ultra 4 Racing King of the Hammers. And thinking about, I could be wrong on this, but I know Charlene was their first employee, but she was a contractor. I think I'm the first full-time employee of Ultra 4 Racing.
Interesting.
I think I hold that distinction.
And what were those early years at KOH like?
Chaos.
I remember.
You had two larger than life personalities working together, trying to make something awesome happen, and somehow it always happened. But up until about 6 minutes before it happened, I was always scared it wasn't going to happen.
And you were their marketing. What was your job title over there, or what were your duties?
Sales and operations. I was, calling all my old friends that I had made from my years at 4 Wheel Parts, going, "Hey, you should come out and take a look at this. It's cool. Be a vendor, be a sponsor." We started the national series while I was there, and so getting people to come out to that, just spreading the word.
And what was the one thing, if you can pin it down, where you had like that might have been like an aha moment with KOH, and where you knew this thing was just going to be unbelievable?
Just that year after year after year, it kept getting bigger, and Dave was always able to come up with these. He's going to hear this, and it's not stupid ideas that he would be able to pull off, sell to both the racers, the sponsors, and the fans, and they would keep coming. I don't know.
It was like he was able to reinvent, keep the core, but reinvent.
Yeah, and just come up with new things every time just to make it fresh.
The thing that impressed me with Dave is that I always thought that he got the right people in the right positions at the right time, but also he was willing to risk.
Oh, he would go all in. Yeah, and it would pay off. I don't even remember where the start of the international came from, but the next thing I know, 2 weeks after we're done with KOH, I'm on a plane with Dave and JT going to Europe to talk to guys in Portugal and Morocco and Croatia about taking Ultra 4 across the pond.
So I've talked to JT a little bit off the air about some of those trips. What do you remember? What do you remember of those international trips?
So JT and I have a similar background. We were both in the military, during the Cold War, and I don't think either one of us ever thought we would be in Eastern Europe without an armored column behind us.
Right.
So here we are landing in Croatia, and former Czechoslovakian secret police agent Igor is picking us up at the airport. It was surreal. riding through the streets, seeing things that you never thought you'd see, and Igor telling us that the S10 Blazer that we're riding in was brought over to him by the CIA. Incredible.
And the people, not so much the Igors and the officials that you guys had to deal with, but just the people themselves. Was that surprising, the way that they, I haven't been to Europe, or especially Eastern Europe, but going into Japan, going to Australia, going to Baja, those places the people were really friendly.
100%. And we get JT to tell you this story, but we're in Croatia. We're in a town that probably 5 Americans have ever been to before, ever. And JT and Dave go to this bar, and JT's wearing a shirt with his race car on it. And the bartender at the bar sees the shirt and instantly recognizes it, and recognizes who JT is and where it's from. And it's just incredible in this day and age how far what you do thousands and thousands of miles away gets to the far corners of the world, and you're recognized and greeted like an old friend. It's amazing. But it's just like Baja when you go down there and you're racing, and it's all family. I don't care if you've never met anybody. There's laughing and there's hey, and you've got a common passion that kind of transcends everything else.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing.
And the organizations that you guys established over there, how easy was that? Especially getting past the red tape in some of these countries.
Fortunately, everybody that Dave ended up hooking up with to make this happen already had had laid the groundwork, from Simon Chisholm's dad in England. The guy's name escapes me, from Portugal. You know it and I know it. Neither one of us can probably remember it.
Correct. I'm so bad with names.
But, this was a guy who came over, sold us on going to Portugal, and then came over and volunteered every year at KOH. So, again, Dave put the team together that needed to be there to make everything work. So, I may not have seen everything, but it seemed like it was just amazingly clicked together almost easily. Like, why isn't everyone doing this? It's so easy.
And what was the thing that you're the most proud of during your time with KOH?
I don't know about proud, just pulling it off every year. I'm very proud of that. But the best thing about my time with KOH was the friends I developed. Simon, Dave, Sean Wilson, who I miss every day.
Yes.
Lifelong relationships that I'll never forget. I always had a relationship with Danny, and that just got better and then strained with KOH, but he was always a friend. So
right.
That was the best part of just being able to meet new people. Meeting Igor, a guy who's freaking from a former country that I was supposed to be at war with, who's now just a great story I get to tell and talk to every so often. But the friendships.
Nice. And what, after your stint with KOH, where did you land?
I went back to Four Wheel Parts because, just like a bad relationship, you always forget the bad parts and think, hey, we can make it work this time.
And was that Was that something you were working on while you were still with at KOH, or was it, did that relationship come to an end and then you just went back to them?
It was just, they were always at KOH. They became my biggest customer instead of me being their employee. They were always, a big sponsor, a big supporter. So I'm not going to say I didn't have any hard feelings about being let go, but I always kept my friendships there. So when it just came time to get out of Ultra 4, the door was kind of always open for me to come back.
Right. And at that point, both Greg and Kevin were racing too.
Yeah.
So you had that relationship as well. Besides just working with the company, you'd see them all the time out there as well. So that helps, I guess.
It does, and like I said, it was always a family, and we always kind of just could always call each other or whatever if I needed something. Brant Jagerberger was racing too, and he was their marketing guy, and so yeah, it was always just the same group of people doing different things.
And that second stint at Four Wheel Parts, what was your job title then?
I was just doing events for them. I was, making sure that SEMA went well for the house brands, with, not really the retail part of it, but the manufacturing side of it. All the events that we would go to, Jeep Beach, Moab, BJS, KOH. So basically, I just would hop back and forth on the velvet rope. Either I was the guy letting people into the velvet rope, or I was the guy being let in. So it never really changed. It just changed who was signing my paycheck.
And how long did you stay the second stint?
Probably another 4 years, I think, somewhere around there. And then they got bought out by Polaris. Greg sold it, and as typically happens when investment companies come in, they reorganize everything. So after that, I went out to Mark Turner at Daystar out in Phoenix. Kind of slowed my life down a little bit. Went out there to be his warehouse manager and worked with him and Jim Chick out there for a couple of years. Changed. I used to commute, hour and a half to work because that's just what it took, and went out to Phoenix and went to a 10-minute commute, and my life was just awesome.
Right.
I could wake up, and being a guy, I could throw on a shirt and pants and be at work a half hour after I woke up.
The time at Daystar, how long were you there?
2 years.
2 years. And you were working. Jim was in charge of marketing, wasn't he? Or did you take over that position?
Nope, I was the warehouse manager. Really got real simple when I got out there. Jim was handling marketing and sales. Mark was at his beginning of gobbling up companies and bringing them into the fold. So it was an exciting time at Daystar.
After Daystar?
I tried to quit the industry, Rich. I really did.
Right.
I was, my time with Daystar ended about the time the COVID pandemic came through. I ended up in a hospital for 3 months.
Oh.
With tubes down my throat, and flatlined one night when I decided I needed to get out of bed and take a piss, and didn't realize that I couldn't do that anymore.
And it was COVID?
It was COVID.
Wow. So you're one of the ones that got kicked in the nuts, you might say.
Exactly. I thought I had a sinus infection, went into the hospital ER one night thinking, I'll go in, they'll give me antibiotics, I'll be fine. Doctor came by, told me to get a chest x-ray, and 3 months later I was getting out of the hospital. But it was a freaking gut punch. I lost, I want to say I lost 30 or 40 pounds, came out weak as a baby, and it was just awful. So I kind of reevaluated my life after that. It was time to be with family and do a lot less travel, a lot less work. And I took about a year off and just relaxed and exhaled, got my strength back, became a human being again.
And
but that never lasts.
right.
So I was cruising LinkedIn as I would do when I started thinking about working again, and Steve Onsager was looking for somebody to come down and do events for Bilstein, and I called and said, "How about me, Steve?" And he's like, "Really? You know, with everything you've done, this is an entry level position." I'm all perfect, because that's all I really wanted. I wanted that sunset job, and so I'm the event and sponsorship coordinator for Bilstein shock absorbers, and it's back to what I love: going to cool places and hanging out with cool people.
There you go. You're attending races and everything?
I go to the races for short course. When we're getting back into score racing with UTV, class 7, class 11. So I get to hang out with those guys. SEMA, EJS, all the usual haunts.
You just can't get away. I've always said that people in the off-road industry don't change careers, they just change business cards.
Exactly.
It's something about it,
It's not easy, but it's easy. It's the same old people. We all kind of know each other and know what everybody's about. Even the bad guys aren't bad guys; they're good guys. It just depends on what your situation is at the time with them. Are they your customer, or are you their customer, or whatever it is?
Or a competitor.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I've seen guys go from, working with one and then being a competitor against that one, and feathers get ruffled, and then back to working with them, or change positions and now back to being buddies. And as an event promoter, just sitting back the whole time watching all this stuff happen always amazed me. But then again, the event promoters, didn't always get along as well either. We always had our headbutting, you might say. But luckily I've gotten over that with everybody, and it's still pretty good friends with everybody.
It's amazing, because I think we're all trying to get to the same place, and we all just have different ways to get there, but all the roads converge at the same place. And sometimes you're trying to take people with you and they don't want to go, so you have to go a different way. But you end up coming back together later on.
Very true. Very true. So you have an interesting hobby that that I actually got to call you about one time, and that's you quilt.
Midgets? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, we'll get to the midget wrestling here shortly.
Yeah. So growing up in the Inland Empire, my mom was a single mom, so I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house. My grandpa taught me how to work on cars, and my grandma taught me how to sew. So they've both stuck with me for 50 years.
And there's nothing wrong with having that kind of a skill.
No, and it's come in very handy at times. Thank God this is not a G-rated show. When I was working at Four Wheel Parts, one of the Budweiser ring girls from Fight Night at the Forum came in, and I don't know how the conversation got turned around to this, but she needed her ring attire modified, and somebody let her know that I sewed. So I'm 20 whatever years old, doing bikini model fittings because I can sew. Not awful.
Not an awful job, huh? So I can remember Shelley and I were cruising across the country as we did for quite a few years, and we ended up in Paducah, Kentucky. And anybody that knows quilting or Paducah understands that it is like the U.S. capital for quilting. They have a big show and just lots of stuff happens in Paducah for quilting. Well, Shelley decided she wanted to go visit some of these places there, and it ended up being during I want to say it was some kind of international expo for quilting.
International Quilt Festival.
Yes. So I'm walking around with Shelley through all these exhibits at the fairgrounds and different fair buildings. It's kind of like Off-Road Expo, but just with material and little old ladies for the most part. Yes, there were some in there and, middle-aged, a few younger, but most of them were female and older. And, I'm not a spring chicken. So when I say older, I mean older. And I remember going, I wonder if Chris is here. So I called you and I'm walking around through this building and all of a sudden this little old lady gets in my face. And I mean, she comes up below chest level to me and she has got her finger in my chest and she's looking up at me and she is mad, as mad as I have ever seen any LOL, little old lady. And I'm on the phone with you and I'm like, what is going on here? And this lady is so upset because she thought I had my phone out taking pictures of all the artists' work that they had on display. And she was telling me I had to put my phone away. And I'm saying, I'm just talking to a friend. You have to, and she just would not, she was like a bulldog. She would not let go. And I finally said, okay, Chris, I got to go. Hung up and I put my phone away and she followed me around for like an hour out there. It was the craziest thing. She was not intimidated by my size at all.
Oh no, they are tough. You mentioned Off-Road Expo. My glory days were working Off-Road Expo when the quilt show would be in Building 7 the same weekend. So I would work the Procomp tire booth and then take a break and go over and do my quilt shopping next door.
Nice.
It was beautiful.
I didn't even know that was going on.
Talk about sticking out like a sore thumb. I would always take my mother with me to quilt shows. So the little old ladies would be, oh, how nice you're here with your mother. Oh. She was my camouflage, so I could do my quilt shopping.
So it was interesting when I was there. One of the things that I noticed is that there weren't a whole lot of men, first of all, but the ones that were there were typically carrying their partner's purse, and they had the look of like they had just they were just beaten in life, is the best way for me to put it. They didn't really want to be there. So your mom carried her own purse. Did she have that look on her face?
No, she was a crafter too, not as into it as I am, but she would play along and she would laugh and have a good time with it. Good.
So then, go ahead.
I always wear boots when I go to those things because those little old ladies and rascals will ram right up into your ankles. Because as a man, you're an interloper and just something to get around.
They're mobility carts.
Yes.
They're rubber bumpers. Oh, yeah, that's funny. So let's talk a little bit more about your personal life. You're a family man?
I am, yeah. It's been a while. I've got a 12-year-old daughter who's just everything to me, and something I never thought would be in my life. And she's just awesome. She's a crafter. She has a resin business where she makes things with resin, like, soap dishes and art, and sells at craft fairs with her mom. And it's wonderful to watch. And she's scary. My daughter is scary. She's 12 years old. She's running her own business, and she goes with me to midget wrestling matches. So
what a great segue. Let's talk about the midget wrestling. How did that get started? Not that you're wrestling midgets. Might want to explain what we're doing.
The security will keep you away from the ring.
You know that personally?
I saw it last night at the midget wrestling match that I was at. I don't know how it happened or how it started, but I've always just had a fascination with really short people. I worked with Shannon Welch for a while, and she played right into that for me. Roxy, they're just, and somehow in my life, I don't go more than 3 or 4 days without a little person walking past me or just being adjacent to me. And I don't know, it's a thing. So whenever Micromania, the Midget Wrestling Federation,
Micromania,
because midget lives matter,
right?
They come to Lake Elsinore and they wrestle at the baseball stadium we have here, and we go every time.
Nice.
And I make sure I get tickets early so we can sit ringside, and my daughter talks trash, and I laugh and take pictures and love it.
And she's heckling the wrestlers?
Oh, yeah.
And how tall is she for a 12-year-old?
She's 5'2".
Okay.
So she's,
she can hold her own.
Inches. She's 6 or 8 inches taller than most of the wrestlers.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, it's a family tradition.
It's awesome. Just awesome. So you're living down in that Lake Elsinore area then, California?
Yeah, I live in Canyon Lake. It's a little private community with a water ski lake, and I kind of just decided I wanted a place where I could have my daughter and where all of her friends would want to come instead of having to worry about where she's going to be. So my ulterior motive to be a protective dad.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what does the future hold for Chris?
More of the same. I'm finally getting my commercial driver's license so I can legally drive trucks again. Be out on the road and just.
So you can legally drive them again?
Yeah. So I've got probably 1 million miles of towing 40-foot trailers across the country for Dave at Ultra 4 and for 4-wheel parts, and never had a license to drive, that size truck or that size vehicle. And now I'm actually finally going to school to get my CDL, and I'll have that here in a couple of weeks. So I don't see myself stopping that now.
Awesome. And things are going good at Bilstein?
They're good. We're just, breaking back into the UTV market. The short course guys are doing great. Just hoping to get a little more desert racing going, and it's good.
Awesome.
I'm loading it up with former 4-wheel parts employees, so I've got my people coming back to me, and it's great.
Perfect. That's always good. I mean, like I said, it's just changing business cards.
Yep. You go to SEMA and the heads all stay the same and the shirts change.
Yep. There you go. Just don't wear the Crocs, the yellow Crocs. I mean, I love the Line X company. I love the people. A lot of. I have quite a few friends that have businesses, Line X businesses. In fact, I almost became an owner of a Line X business. But I could not wear the yellow Crocs. Sorry.
Yeah, that was some corporate decision by some consulting marketing group.
Yeah, you know it. So, did anything ever like that happen at Four Wheel Parts that you could remember where you just said, no, I don't want to do this?
Scotty was a art major from somewhere in his previous lives, and so he would play with colors as far as, these are complementary colors, and he decided that Procomp's color would be purple, and I was never a big fan of that. It was, I was the macho guy coming out of the military and all that. Purple just did not play into my palette. So
right. So you didn't want to wear purple Crocs?
I didn't want to wear the purple racing shirt style that was so popular back then.
Right.
With the 3,000 stitches of embroidery on the back that never moved because it was so damn stiff.
like a piece of plywood on your back.
Exactly.
Oh, great. So, hey, Chris, I want to say thank you for coming on and spending an hour and talking and just reminiscing and talking about your past. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for having me, Rich. I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing your son next week out at Trail Hero.
There you go. All right. You take care, and I'll let you know when this airs. And again, thank you for always being a friend.
Hey, thank you, bud. And you and Shelly have always been there for me. I still remember the first time we met, so you've made an impression on me.
I'm not going to guess what kind of impression that was, but thank you.
Oh, man, it was my first event ever pulling in, and where were we? Out at Cougar Buttes or out at that Lions
Pride Park? Yes.
Yep. And I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and you made me feel comfortable and took care of me, and you haven't stopped yet.
Here's a secret. I didn't know what the hell was going on either. That was only my second event of ever.
Wow. And I would have never known that.
And it was that was quite the learning curve back then. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me come along on the journey with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, you take care.
Love to, Shelly. Have a good one.
Will do. Bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.